Hey guys, welcome to the Vendas B2B Summit. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Marylou Tyler. She's founder of Strategic Pipeline, a Fortune 1000 sales process improvement consulting group with clients as Apple, Gartner, Prudential, UPS, and MasterCard, and many others. She's also author of two number one bestsellers, Predictable Revenue, already available in Portuguese,
Yeah.
and Predictable Prospecting, hopefully soon to be available in Portuguese. Both books have sold over 60,000 copies worldwide. She also hosts the Predictable Prospecting podcast. We'll link this right here below. Marylou, thank you very much again, and welcome to the summit.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here again, second year in a row here now. It's great.
It's our pleasure, Marylou. Before we start, could you fill some gaps of the little intro that I just wrote and tell us a little bit more about your background and this journey as a consultant?
Sure. I have been working at the same part of the funnel, the top of the funnel and a little bit into the middle. It's going on 30 years now. So I've been focused in this one area for a very long time, even before the internet was the internet, before Apple was Apple, before, Microsoft was Microsoft. I was working on the top of funnel lead generation, and I primarily did direct mail, the telephone, big call centers. So I love this part of the funnel, and I continue to love it and learn and try to iterate and make it better. I'm also an engineer by trade, so I have a lot of process and methodology and systems in my DNA. So everything I do when I work with you and other clients is to try to put things in process as much as possible and leverage technology where we can, but not forgetting that the human interaction is still the way we sell.
That's amazing. It's everything that we trying to push here in Brazil. People structure more their sales operations and use more a strategic and structured approach to selling and leveraging technology. So it's always amazing to talk to you. So today we're going to talk about how to prepare and warm up a list of big accounts. As I told you when we were choosing the topic, we are having a lot of content here in Brazil talking about SaaS and transactional sales, or it's a complex sales, but not for big accounts with ACVs not very high. So today I want to talk with you with prospecting to big accounts. And the first challenge is to identify the right kind of accounts that we have, as you guys wrote in Predictable Revenue, greatest likelihood of closing and revenue potential. So how do you do it with your clients? How to identify the right kind of accounts?
Well, when we first go in, we look to see if there are in the ideal account profile. So we build that first. Always build the ideal account profile of those accounts that firmographically fit, whatever your top metrics are, high probability of closing, high likelihood of revenue for a long time, things like that, number of employees, demographic type information. We do that. And then if we have the luxury, we go into our database of existing accounts and we pull samples of accounts that we won and accounts that we lost that were in that ideal account profile. So you take that fork in the road, win and loss, and you bring up those accounts that fit that profile. And then what you're going to do is dissect the sale. So you're beginning with the end, and then you're working your way up the funnel to get a picture of the buyer's journey, how they bought from you, and the sales process, how you sold to them. So that's step number one, is to, after you build your ideal account profile, go to the end if you have accounts that you've won or lost, and build the actual conversation path, both buyer and seller. And then from there, you're going to start seeing bubbling up who the people were at the top of the funnel that started those conversations with you. Who are the people that brought you into the first meeting? Who are the people that brought their team together so that you can start that discovery process and build towards opportunity. And then, of course, from opportunity to close, what did that look like in terms of deliverables, in terms of the decision process, the buying process, etc. So you're going to map all this out, on paper, on a whiteboard, before you even begin to do anything else. And what you'll have now, if you remember from predictable revenue, you'll have a list of the people with whom you should be starting conversation. Now, if you look at predictable prospecting in chapter 3 of that book, we want you to identify not only the decision makers, but the people who directly influence those decision makers. And then the next ring out of that bullseye is the people who indirectly influence those decision makers. So you're going to have probably a list of 3, 5, 7, 10 potential prospects that you're going to talk to in these larger accounts that you're going to want to weave in then to your already existing process. If you have a transactional process, you're going to weave in, instead of blasting out to these people, you're going to treat them all as if they are already in working status, because these are accounts that you've targeted and they're large accounts and you want them as clients. So you don't reach out to them with cold messages. You reach out to them as you would when they're in working status, which means you're going to add more personalization to every conversation you have.
That's amazing. So we have to look at our data and find,
if you have it,
companies we have success in the past, and understand what are the profile or the characteristics of the company and the people that we talk to in this accounts,
as well as what was the journey that the buyers pulled you into, and what was the sales process that you ended up following. Now, every account will probably be different. There'll be some nuances to each, but if you're going to get at 80% accuracy of this is really the way that these people buy, and this is the way that we sold it to them, and here's the timeline from beginning to end, you're going to be armed with a lot more information about how to prepare your content, how often you should touch the people in these accounts, what types of levers you should use. Should you be phone? Should you be email? Do you need to send a postcard? Do you need to have an executive briefing? Those things should pop up if you all take a deep dive into those accounts and look to see as best you can what happened.
Great. And with big accounts, it's usually, as you said, it's not only the phone and the email.
It's multiple social. I just had on my podcast yesterday Mario Martinez, who's a social expert, and he has this social rhythm down of how to integrate it into our outreach. So yes, you're going to become a student of social. You're going to become a student of direct mail if you want to get in, if direct mail makes sense for your prospect. But the difference is now we're turning everything on its head and creating marketing conversation, sales conversation for each of the people in the accounts now, not the account itself.
Great. And what about if you're just starting out and you don't have a lot of data from the past to identify who were successful?
Then what I would do is I would put down my best guess, and I would do some research on competitors who might be in that space already and try to ascertain the types of companies that they have been successful in those markets that you're trying to get into. But you're going to really have to rely on the fact that you're going to design a specification, you're going to activate it, and you've got to be spot on that you're testing and you're actually measuring what's going on in those conversations so that you can quickly pivot if you need to, iterate if you need to, or start over if you need to, if you don't have the right information. And that's just our life. That's what we do, because we can quickly get a statistically relevant sample of what's going on. We don't need a lot of records for that. If you look up statistical relativity, there's not a lot of stuff that needs to go down the pipeline in order to start making some intelligent decisions about how to go and proceed next.
Amazing. We're trying to talk with a lot of Brazilian companies, because we have a lot of trouble, especially smaller companies, to keep track of all these experiments and tracking all the results of all these campaigns that we are doing. And it's simply fundamental to learn with the process.
Right. And what I do with my clients is I just say, draw your pipeline. So now you have bubbles or circles. You have a cold where you haven't talked to them yet at all, or they're old accounts that you haven't spoken with for a long time, or it's a new list. Then as you start getting engagement, you go to working status. So there's a cold status, there's a working status. Put some metrics there, a couple, which are intra-stage within the stage. Put one metric that gets you from cold to working. And then while you're in working stage, that's when you have to start gathering the people that are going to be sitting around that table who will let you in for the next big presentation, demonstration, discovery, whatever it is. And there are metrics in there so that you can determine, of these 3 people that I know I need to get, here is their engagement score. Here is how much we've contacted them. Here is their response to us. Here's who we still need to work on to get them to bubble up to loving us now to go to the next stage. So there's not a lot of statistics, but if you think about where people are parked along the pipeline, and then think about, what do I need to know that's meaningful in nature that will get me further into the pipeline or actually out? So maybe there's a persona or a buyer that is not the right guy. You need to replace him with someone who you think might be. When you look at it like that, at relative position in the pipeline, your stress level will come down because you can actually think about movement. And that's really what you want to do. A pipeline is all about movement, whether it's going in further or it's exiting out. So just make some metrics around those, very simple, not a lot, so that you're looking at things that are movement related and you've got it.
Great. What about messaging? I see a lot of Brazilian companies struggling in articulate their company's competitive position. So what is the role of messaging in prospecting, and what advice can you share with us about it?
I like to think of messaging and the types of messaging that we do, again, as record dependent. So let's say that I have 20 accounts that I'm going after, and there's going to be 3 to 5 decision makers per account. So 20 times 5 is 100. That's a small enough number that I would want to hyper-personalize every correspondence that goes out. How do I do that? What I do is I start creating templates of conversation that has why people should change, why now, why us, and has an argument, a compelling argument as to why they should take a meeting. So you got to figure that verbiage out. Now there's a lot of templates and checklists of how to do that online. And I could actually send you the one that I use with my clients, which it captures the relevant speaking points that you can put in these templates. And then people always forget the next call to action. So there's a variety of calls to action that you're going to use in these larger accounts. It's not all about, can I have a meeting? Can I have a meeting? Can I have a meeting? No, it's about all different things to go to that next level of trust and rapport. So lower number of records, hyper-personalize. As you get up to what you can only do 25 to 35 of those a day. The next level up, you would leverage the data that's in your database and create messages that pull that data in to make it more meaningful. We call that data-driven personalization. And then for everybody else, I am a fan still of mass personalization, as long as you, again, follow the rules to make it worthwhile for that prospect to read that message from you. And it's very simple if you do it like that, in those 3 segments of hyper-personalization, data-driven, and then if you got a ton of records you're trying to weed through, mass personalization will do that for you.
Amazing. So let's get into the how to warm up this list. So after we have the ICP or the ideal account profile and the messaging ready, how we warm up this list of big accounts before having this first time conversation with them.
Again, you have a little bit of intel from your existing accounts, or you're making your best guess. So you've built a bullseye of the guy that you really want in the room is in the middle of the bullseye. The next level out are the people who have his ear, directly influence him. And the level out from that are the people who indirectly influence. And that could be vendor relationships. That could be consultants that work in the account. That could be a whole different department that will give you some intel. So once you have this map, then the way you warm it up is by leveraging the sequence, which I'm sure one of your other experts are going to talk about the sequences. And what we do now
Larson talk a lot about cadences.
Yeah, cadence. Well, cadence to me is the rhythm. And that would be, do I touch them with a phone, and then 2 days later, do I use an email, or do I use and then the sequence is the actual touches along the sequence of events. So it's, day 1, do this, day 3, do this. And then the cadence is, what do I do within that? So what's different for the higher level accounts is that we want to get to a level of granularity where we have specific messaging for each of those important people that we want to talk to. We talk in their language. So an IT person talks differently than a marketing person. A marketing person talks differently than a C-suite person. So eventually we want to get to the point where our messaging is also segmented by persona, which we didn't discuss this in predictable revenue. We just talked ICP, but in predictable prospecting, we talk about building persona profiles for the person. So we know their pain points, we know how they articulate their pain points, and then we know the priority of those pain points so that we leverage that in our sequence when we start talking. The other thing we do with big accounts, if you're not afraid of the phone, is that we like to leverage what we call immersion day, where we take that bullseye and we call in and around the bullseye into the one company. The goal is to get someone to talk to so that we could, again, move this record from working status over to qualification status if possible. So we do those a couple times a week in our block time and get in the rhythm of calling in and around the bullseye is what we call it.
That's really. What about social? Do you use like ads or something to help warm up these accounts?
The consensus is if we have these big accounts that we're going after, chances are we have a pretty good sized marketing department. So chances are, not always, but if we have a good sized marketing department, we want them to handle that level of awareness of using ads and whatnot. We want to just really get to the person. We want to do one-to-one. Let marketing do the one-to-many, as my colleague says. And it's true. If you have a marketing department, you're working those big accounts, our goal as salespeople is to get belly to belly with our prospect, one-to-one. Let marketing do the things that bubble up the people one-to-many. And I lump ads into that. But our responsibility is to go into LinkedIn, to use our social and start networking with the people in the account. Start commenting on if they're in a blog post, if you see their name responding to a blog post, reply to that. So people will look there. We always love to look to see who's replied to our stuff, So that way they start to learn, oh, this company, it's subliminally in there, and then you reinforce that with your emails and your voicemails and your voice conversations.
Great. We are running some experiments here to run ads in the small list that we are about to call. So before we call them, we're running ads only to those 100
accounts, right?
So we haven't the results yet, but we're pretty excited that it will help warm up those people that we're about to call. So few days earlier, we start to run ads only for them. Well, pretty soon we're gonna have some results, and I'll share with you.
Share that with us, yeah, because the beauty of what we do is that we're leveraging technology as much as we can to start warming up the chill of these accounts. So as long as we can do it in a way that's respectful, authentic, then I'm all for it. I want to use as many levers as I can to warm that conversation up so that when I do send them an email or when I do make that phone call, they might have an inkling of who I am. But we also have to be prepared that we're going to deal with 5 levels of awareness. They don't know they have a problem. They don't know how to articulate the problem. They don't know who can solve their problem. They don't know who we are. So we've got to be able to create our value proposition for each of our people, our personas, in a way that gets them to lean in like I am now and really want to listen to what you have to say. So planning and working through the what if scenarios is always the best way to get started on these types of outreach campaigns.
Great. We just mentioned cadences and sequences.
Mm-hmm.
When we are targeting big accounts, what are the best practices? I know that's never a silver bullet or a single answer to every context, but
Right.
what about number or sequencing or messaging? When we're talking about big accounts, what are the best practices in terms of the volume of contacts that we have to get in touch?
If you're faint of heart, there's a light way to contact people. So it's maybe once a week, twice a week. If you're really thinking about, like you were talking about before, hitting them on all these various channels, you could be up to once a day touching them on different channels, not bugging them on the phone all the time or sending, 5 emails 5 days in a row. But you're going to look at how you can leverage the technology. But it would be nice to touch people once a day. And again, when we were talking before, find out the best times, best time to call, best time to email, best time to send a social message. Like for me personally, Friday afternoons, I get a slew of inbound coming in for people who've had a bad week and they're like, okay, I'm throwing in the towel. I need your help, Marylou. So I just know that I'm not going to do anything out of my office during that time frame. I'm going to be in the office because I want to respond to those inbound requests. So there are pockets of time that you want to get smarter at when you're working with these larger accounts. I can remember before the internet, I would be sitting out in the parking lot at 6:30 in the morning waiting for the CEO to come to the office with a cup of coffee in my hand, because I knew that they would be coming in early. So that's what we want to do. We want to leverage the technology to get smarter about when to call, when to email, and just start tracking it. It's very simple to track these things. And if you don't have technology, you can track it in the comments. I use a hashtag BTTC for best time to call, for example, that we just put in the comments. You can parse that out later, do a report on figuring out for this role, this persona, when's the best time to do this. And once you have that, you're going to maximize your return on effort. So maybe you don't need to send stuff every day because you're going to know when these people are consuming information, when they're in the office. It's like you are them. You have to think the way they think, act the way they act, read what they read, do what they do. It really comes down to that.
That's really good. Marylou, there's a lot of companies right now in Brazil starting to create those SDR and BDR roles.
Mm-hmm.
Something that is really buzzing right now. But there's a lot of doubts on when to do it, how to do it. So, could you give like a parting piece of advice for companies who are starting those SDR, BDR operations? Of what are the best way to start and to create a robust strategy?
The best thing to do, again, is begin with the end of mind. This time you're going to start with how many opportunities do I need to generate per SDR role? If I were to have the SDR role, how many opportunities do I need to generate that will give me the revenue that I'm looking for? So you start with the opportunity number. The next step up is, if you're doing demos, if you're doing discovery calls, how many discovery calls do I need? The next step up from that is how many fit calls, how many qualification calls do I need to do? Up from that would be, how much correspondence do I need to send out, or am I sending out now? And when you work that up all the way to the list and how you got that first call, was it human, meaning I picked up the phone and found the right person, or was it some other mechanism, meaning I have a record count? Then you're going to know how many records you would need. And once you've got that, that'll help you decide whether you can afford to put a full-time SDR in that role, because you'll have the metrics to know how much talk time has to happen, how many emails need to go out, what other activities they need to do. And the beauty of an SDR role is we are habit engines. We are consistent habit engines. So we are supposed to be doing these workflows, block times, daily activities. It's not willpower, it's habit. And if you have those numbers, you'll know whether you're ready to support a full-time SDR or not. That's the best way to do it. Work backwards.
Great, Marylou. Thank you very much again. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. For people who want to know more about you, your books and your work, where's the best place to find you?
The best place would be to go to MarylouTyler.com. So it's MarylouTyler.com. From there, you can get everywhere you need to go. You can download a free chapter of the new book. You can listen to the podcast. I've got almost 90 episodes out there now. Loving the podcast thing. It's so much fun. And we'll be announcing some joint classes here pretty soon so that we can keep you guys really revving up those engines and creating an outbound process that's going to scale the way you want and get you the revenue you're looking for.
Amazing, Marylou. We will link all this, your website and everything that we are planning to do right below this video. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
I hope to see you here in Brazil this year.
Yes. And just so you know, I'll put some checklists out there, and that backwards thing I was just talking about. I have a worksheet so you guys can work through those numbers. And I was like, what did she say? I'll put it all out there for you so you can get to the bottom line of how many SDRs do we really need. Okay?
Great, Marylou. Thank you very much.
Thank you.